Hey, I'm Seth.
And I am Aaron.
You forgot for a minute, didn't you?
You threw it off. It was different.
It has to be different. Well, today's episode is going to be, I think, very concise. It's going to be a self-evaluation done by me and done by you. This is part one of a part two series of what we think, from our own perspective, we've gotten right. Things we've done correctly during our photography journey. The journey is always, of course, never ending, but I think that we've had some mild success, and we're going to share our own personal opinion, our own self-evaluation of what those things are and the nuance of those things that maybe people can implement themselves.
Yeah, exactly. I think that sounds fun, succinct, to the point, and hopefully helpful for people listening.
Photography after last week where we said we weren't allowed to say the photography word. So now we can get back to getting it all out of our system.
Yeah, thank goodness. That was tough.
Yeah, it was difficult. But it was a good palate cleanser. Mm-hmm. So I think the format of this is maybe I'll do two, you'll do two, and then we'll do a part two next week. And we'll kind of bounce back and forth. I'll say something, then you'll have your thoughts, I'm sure. And who the hell knows where our conversations go? I don't anymore.
Nope. Yeah, let's get at it. We've got a format, so at least it's going somewhere.
That's true. That's true. Well, since it was sort of my idea that I threw upon you, I will give you the grace of going first. Do you mind?
Oh, okay.
You didn't want to go first? What is that about people who don't want to go first? Are you a first in line person, or are you I'll wait and see?
Early on.
Third in line?
Yeah, I want to see what we're dealing with. One presentation, two presentations, then I'll get it going. Just if I have to make any quick adjustments on the fly. Yeah, I don't need to wait till the very end. But
you're not last, but you're not first. But you're up in the top percentile of going first.
I would think so.
Okay, that's fair. Well, I'm going to make
ready to go.
You're going first.
Okay, now it's just the question of which one do I want to share.
Yeah, one thing you've gotten right that has helped you with your success in your photography journey that you would like people to know about.
Yeah, I think from the beginning on, early-ish on in the photography career, I sort of imagined this skill set out in the ether. And what I mean by that, it wasn't just photography. It was kind of this big overarching umbrella of what I wanted to get into. And having that sort of direction out there somewhere, floating in my brain or even writing things down, I had this idea of I want to get good at photography, but I also want to edit in a certain way. I want to try this certain way of editing. Not only that, I am interested in video. Eventually, I would like to get into doing some video stuff and testing my mettle at that. Ooh, drone stuff is really cool. I want to be able to fly a drone and take cool photos with that. I want to add that to my repertoire, my tool belt. So I had this idea of what are the things within photography or content creation or marketing or whatever it may be. What are the tool set that I want to get to? And I didn't overwhelm myself. It wasn't like when you go to college and you get that first day syllabus of all the stuff that you're going to do. It's not due in a day. You have the whole semester to get this stuff done. But in my mind, I kind of held it like that. Like, hey, these are all the things that I would like to try at least, to the things that I'm interested in that I feel like will help me overall. And because of that, I felt that there's been many opportunities with some businesses, marketing, Airbnbs, stuff that I've done for my personal stuff, where I have this tool belt to be able to say, oh, I can do this or use this aspect, or this video would be great here, or drone footage would be great here. Photography only would be great here. A mix of the both would be great here. Where I feel that I'm very covered for almost any job that comes to my way, or anything that I want to do that says, hey, can you do this? Do you have this capability? Are you able to do this as well? And being able to offer all these different things.
Yeah, what you're speaking about is a style. I mean, I guess you can choose, and it's on a spectrum of I'm going to be super well rounded, or I'm going to very much be an expert in one or two areas.
Yeah. And I think I've always liked the well rounded approach with life, with everything to me. Uh, I mean, we've seen it. I feel like you can be an expert at certain things, but certain things move on, certain things change, certain things go, and that might leave you high and dry. Uh, it could, or it could just be your niche, and you're really drilled down to like this is what you do, and you're not going to waste your time with some other stuff. And people might argue like, yeah, well, you're not the best at any of that stuff, and I'd say you're correct. I am not. However, for most cases in my life and my career and what I'm looking to do with photography on a part-time basis, it really does sort of fill the gamut of what I can offer for these sort of part-time jobs. So it works for me a bit better than to just be limited as a part-time person that says like, no, I only do drone photography. Okay, well, that's not what we need for this one. And if I'm not really trying to fill my calendar with gigs, it's very helpful for when things come along where I can say yes to most requests.
Got it. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you think that it's more valuable to be the guy who can do a whole bunch of stuff for an entity or a client as opposed to having them go seek out the best in each individual category for what they may need.
I I guess it depends on the client, but for me, that's worked nicely. I just
Okay.
did photography stuff with a financial group, catching them in the action of their day to day, and that was
Okay.
very
Case
fun.
study. Case study.
Yeah,
How did being versatile help you from start to finish?
great. So it started with photography, right? Hey, we need some pictures. I have a connection, which was one of my other points, but we have a connection. Hey, you do photography. Can you capture in the way that you capture your lifestyle stuff I've seen with your like Airbnbs? Can you capture that at a kind of boring office setting? Can you try to make it more engaging, our photography more engaging? Sure, this sounds like a challenge. This will be fun. I can use some long lenses. I can get some candid shots. I can do some different things that I want to. That goes really well. Great. Hey, do you happen to do video? We have to do these bio videos. They're easy. Maybe, one or two cameras, some lighting, just people saying what they do here with cue cards. And I was like, absolutely. Because I got into that skill before, I have lighting. I have multiple bodies and cameras. I've done video editing on Premiere. There's nothing in my brain that goes, well, this is out of my league. Instead, if I had no clue, I might go, oh, I have someone that could do it, or I don't know. And now they have to go search for that sort of thing. But now I can keep the work coming and feel like, hey, there's different avenues of work here. I can give them good prices. They have a one stop shop for most of their needs here. This is not a Super Bowl commercial. It's within my wheelhouse. It's within my range of video. From there, they're in a really cool office and they're like, hey, we saw a FPV fly through drone for social media purposes. Do you think you could like do a quick fly through of our property? And I was like, I probably could. It's huge. And I have the equipment. So, job number 3, able to do because of that sort of toolkit that I developed from the beginning, not all at once, but out of developing interest and being like, hey, I want to try this also. Hey, I want to try this also. And in some cases, it served
Okay.
me really well.
Yeah. So what you just said there, I want to kind of leads into my next question was how do you know what would be useful in your own tool belt? And this could be a combination of things. It sounds like at first, and correct me if I am wrong, that it was, I'm interested in learning that thing because it seems fun. I'm interested in that. I would like to. I want to have that skill. Is it simply, was filling your tool belt simply fulfilling that process? Or was it also recognizing, ooh, they just asked me to do some, client X or whoever asked me to do something that I am definitely incapable of? That might be handy.
Mhm.
So, in other words, was it also being asked to do things that you had an aha or a realization that I have no idea how to do this, so I may as well learn for so that I don't get, or so that I can offer that skill set to people in the future.
Yeah. This goes back to I talked about on one of our shows my first paid gig with Mike Neutrino.
Mhm.
And we were, at that time, we had someone that was an FPV drone pilot, and they wanted a ridiculous price for the day's work. So we found someone else sort of last minute to help us out. And we outsourced that part of the gig. However, because of travel and whatnot, it was a little sketchy in terms of the pressure or the stress getting them to the place and running through it and having the trust that this is going to be good or they know what they're doing. It turned out great. But from that point, we all know Mike is an FPV pilot and has done a great job. And he said, no more. Like, I'm taking this skill over so I don't have to ever worry about who's doing this. And this is a great skill to be able to offer. So similar things like that. That wasn't the top of my list. I didn't have a huge desire to learn that thing at that point. But down the road, with technology being easier, DJI has some cool FPV versions of getting that look at a sort of basic level, but it still gives you that look. And that came down the road. But that lesson there was sort of a eye opener of like, if you're limited, it hurts the potential to create some of these jobs. You either have to have really close connections or a team of people that can do stuff, and or learn stuff yourself. That's probably the best way. So you don't have to outsource or trust other people necessarily, unless you have a well-trusted team that you've built. But to be able to say, okay, I can work. So they want video. I can work my way around a video camera. I know the tech around it. I know Premiere Pro. This does not seem out of my league. I've done plenty of projects on my own. This will help me only going forward.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So
I guess it comes down. You mentioned FIFA, right? Anybody who plays like video games, FIFA or NBA or NHL, whatever, you have the player ratings, right? Their overall rating, and then you can go into skills. Yeah. If you're doing soccer, I don't know. I know hockey.
I get where you're going.
Power, speed, all that stuff. So, I mean, what you're talking about is a specific desire to have a certain style where maybe, let's say you're 70s or 80s and everything, and that's your overall rating is, solid, versus somebody who has 99 skating and 99 slap shot power, right? Like, they're going to be designed for a certain task. And I feel like both people can, with their creativity, position themselves to win. But you're obviously explaining your experience and how it's worked for you. So I think it's important that people note just deciding your skill set is a creative choice, and it's stylistic in a sense.
Yeah, I think that's a great analogy. All-time metaphor. Nice job. I agree. It sets you up to be able to do. And again, I'm coming from I'm going to do this part-time, at least for now.
Right.
I'm not stopping my day job. I'm not putting full effort into a niche to create. I'm not going, I'm a wedding photographer and that's what I'm going to book my schedule with because I need to make a salary and I need to have the best wedding photos in New England. Right? I'm going wherever I meet something or an opportunity, I would love to be able to squeeze out as much as I can from those opportunities and not just say, it's happened with almost every gig I feel like that I've had where they're like, do you have capability to do reels? Do you have capability to do X, Y, and Z? And the more times you have to say no, it's just like, okay, well, now I have to find another client again versus staying with a client for a long time and coming up with projects that you're going to systematically do throughout the year. That's been really nice to have that occasionally, not all the time, but occasionally where you're like, oh, for the next couple months, I'm set with my part-time gig, right? And to be able to offer or talk about other opportunities where then you could pitch to them, hey, we've done photos, you like that. What about a quick 2-minute video on what's going on in your office and sort of introduce everyone? Here's some of the videos I've made. You can see that they're professional. You can see that they're decent. Like, we could do that also for a decent price. Like, let's keep it going.
Hey man, you've liaisoned beautifully into my point. I don't want to just change it to about me.
No, please.
We're on a tight schedule, but
Yeah.
it was an awesome tether to one of my points for one of the things that I've gotten right in my photography journey. And that was building off of small momentum.
Mm-hmm.
So you just said it. You've been hired to do headshots. Hey, we can also do this. We can do a fly through or some reels or a testimonial video. Here's a proof of concept that I've built either in my own time for free or with another client as a way to demonstrate some, an additional thing that we can do. Because sometimes people, unless you say, hey, it could be a good idea to do this also, I don't think the person you're working for is going to always bring that up on their own. In your case with the financial firm, they brought it up. Hey, could you also do this? Hey, could you also do this? Which is great. But I think sometimes, let's say to continue with the example of headshots, you're hired for headshots. You do your work and you go home, which is great. But if you can build off of the small gig that you already have, and I guess suggest something that's even larger and provides even more value, and just be the one steering the ship in that sense, I think you can build a better relationship with that client person because you're simply doing more for them now.
Yeah.
You can generate more income for yourself and you can expand your portfolio. So I think I learned early on to not just one and done stuff. I hate doing stuff, wiping my hands and walking away. I am very much looking. I don't want to use the Hormozy. You got to scale. Like, you don't have to scale. If you want to do what you're asked to do and go home, that's fine. But I feel like it can open the doors, and it's a chance for you to flex that tool belt that you just described in your first point and to utilize it. It can open the door for a lot more creative opportunities down the line. So building off of small momentum like that is I think super important. What do you think?
Yeah, I want you to expand on that more. I'm curious if you have examples of times in the beginning or when you figured that out or when it went well and you're like, hey, this is a blueprint I'm going to continue to use.
Sure, I have an
worked
example.
really well.
I have an example right now. So the first time I ever went, or maybe it was this first, maybe the second time, doesn't matter, that I went to Jasper National Park, I reached out to the tourism board. I didn't have enough followers at the time. It was a thing where you needed to have, I think, over 10,000 or something to be allowed to work with them. I just asked if I could, create some social media content for them, go on some of the excursions that tour operators offer in the area, such as wildlife tours or the Moline Lake boat cruise to Spirit Island. They said yes. So, I mean, point number one there is ask for stuff, right? So I was getting paid to capture social media content, and that's all great. I could have left it at that, right? Yay, Tourism Jasper was a client. Sweet. I got to do social media content for them. I said, hey, why don't I take this? Because talking about the tool belt, I wanted to get more into writing. I wanted to start getting writing gigs. I said, why don't I take all this content, a lot of the wildlife that I've captured there, and can I write some guest blogs for you? I'll do them for you for free. Because I had no writing experience at the time. And having blog posts published by a reputable tourism board, for me, I saw the value in that despite not getting paid for it. I figured that was a way to scale all the content I had already captured and to build a relationship with my person there. I remember the person there being very skeptical at the time. She's like, do you have any writing ability, or not ability, but experience? And I said, no.
I wrote stories.
Exactly. So
ready to go.
Ended up being really good. They loved it. And I think I wrote a second one. And fast forward to 2023. Well, first of all, now I have published articles in conjunction with a really reputable brand. I think it's important to weigh on this, that the the value versus the time it spent me is tremendous. So I'm not getting paid, but the value that brings in terms of proof of concept is
Yeah.
huge.
Yes.
Massive. Now I can go, when I go to pitch another client for a writing gig, do you have experience? Yeah, actually, here's some links to things I did for Tourism Jasper.
Right.
Okay, so
Huge.
I think it's important to, and this is touching on free work, I think it's important to weigh the ratio between time spent and value gained. That's always, I feel like, my go-to formula, and it's going to be different for everyone when deciding whether to do a proof of concept or do some work for free. What is the value that's being gained? It could be perhaps you're writing for a charity organization. Maybe the value is that you're getting more information out there for a cause you care about. Maybe it's that you add a really cool client to your client list. I don't know. It's different for everybody, but I just wanted to touch on that. Okay.
Yeah.
Getting back to the story. So fast forward to 2023. Where did we go in 2023?
Jasper. Banff.
You and I went to Jasper as the annual TPM photography retreat.
Yep.
And I was able to reach out to my contact there after having done a really good job first with social media stuff, then blog stuff, and say, hey, I have, how many people do we have? 6?
Mm-hmm.
6 photographers coming. Can you hook us up with some really good lodging? Can you hook us up with some really awesome excursions that were, mind you, paid for in exchange for some photos, which added to the overall experience? And I think most people would say that it was like a 10 out of 10 experience because people said that to us, right? Our guests or our attendees. That was a way to, that was just an overall scale. Right.
Yeah.
That was building off of small momentum of a little tiny social media content gig into, hey, can you give us lodging? Can you give us excursions that contributed to the success of a very, very important trip for everybody, for our business? And I feel like that's the first example that comes to my mind of how you can just continue to build on momentum and avoid the one and done type situations. Did I elaborate enough for you? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's great. And I mean, it's a perfect example. And I think there's a sub point here, which almost was one of my main points. And you touched on it too, which is just money is not the only thing that has value.
Right.
It's really important starting off that you can understand different currencies of value, whether that is my writing's now going to be in a reputable company's blog, whether it's just proof of concept that you can use over and over again with someone else, whether it's a first time you've done something and you actually just want to try with a real client and get better at what you're trying to do with practice, whether it's a friend or a company that you really like, or a local company where you can say like, hey, for a free dinner, I'll do some photographs for your menu or your food or your drinks, and sort of build a repertoire. If I want to do food photography, but like, where do I start? You have to start somewhere where there's value other than just getting paid. And I think for almost all of my paid gigs started from an idea that I did on my own. And
it was relatively small.
Yeah, relatively small, and handed over or wrote a narrative or took time to make a Canva presentation. Everything I feel like takes time that it's worth it. And getting rid of the idea early on that I'm just going to be found and people are going to ask me to do stuff. Like, get rid of that idea. Stop doing stuff to be found. Start doing stuff like actively to pursue.
Yeah. That's a great
is a good point.
Yeah, there was sub points.
Sub points.
But yeah, getting out of your head that value is currency is true. Maybe that's where you want it to lead, but there's a lot of ways you can exchange your time for different currencies,
especially starting off.
Yeah, or different means of value, especially starting off. And I think for both of us, a lot of our successes come from pitching low risk things. Let me pitch something very low risk where because the other person doesn't know who I am, the other company doesn't know who I am. I like to present ideas where if I end up being absolutely terrible and not doing any of the things I say I'm going to do, it's not much of a loss for them. For example, those blogs, if I didn't do those,
Yeah.
what's it to them? Give people a reason not to say no.
Yeah.
Right? If I go right off the bat to somebody and that I don't really know well, or I don't have a really solid proof of concept working somewhere else or doing something else, if I go to them and try and pitch a $10,000 gig and they have no idea who I am, we have no relationship,
Yeah.
that's high risk. Look for low risk
Right.
in the beginning for the other party and for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's the other thing that I think people get confused, touching on the free work side of stuff. Using the blog thing, again, as an example, as a means to build off of small momentum. If that took me 2 hours to write and it never got posted, is that a big loss for me?
No.
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 If I spent 20 hours creating reels for free as a proof of concept, is that a big loss for me?
It's getting there. I mean, it's a lot of work.
I would say so. Like, you could, that scale is 100% subjective and going to be different for everyone. But I feel like you'll get that feeling in your gut where you're like, this is too much.
Right.
And if you don't have that feeling right now, you'll build it. I think. I can't tell the amount of times where I'm like, oh, I gave away way too much stuff.
Yeah. And that changes, right? That changes. Yeah. That changes as you get more mature in the industry, I think, and you start to value your time differently. But I think in the beginning, if you're willing to work and you feel like it's a good investment, even if it's 20 hours or 50 hours or a ton of work, if you feel like there's a good chance that this could be picked up or change your life in a better way, then especially in the beginning, you might have to take some losses, I think, overall to get to where you want to be.
Yeah.
So that changes. And sometimes you learn these currencies, you learn these different values, and you can go back on them. For example, if I want to go to vacation in, let's just say Washington State, if I want to go visit some of the national parks there,
mm-hmm.
I have a skill set of charging rental places for deliverables. I can go back on that and say, this is what I normally do. I would love the opportunity to make this vacation happen for me, and I will do this in exchange for the ability to stay here. So the value to me is like, I don't need to get paid, but I would love to not pay for this trip, and I have a skill set that maybe I can barter with. So making it, again, very little loss for them in terms of, okay, we're giving away a day or two, but we might get some great content, and normally we'd have to pay for great content. Let's take our chances here. We're both kind of taking our chances here. So
yeah, I mean, what you're talking about too is like, I guess this is also sometimes a weird way to think about it, that like cutting expenses is as effective for your bottom line as making more, in a sense.
Yeah. I want to get my, I did this before. Like, I wanted to go through dog training with my dog. Training is very expensive. And I was like, it's very specific what I kind of want to be done. His obedience and his walking and his demeanor is dealable. Like, I can deal with it. It's fine. It was a very specific thing with like how he greets dogs and gets into really husky play. I just wanted to, but the price of it was like, God, it's a lot of money to do that. Oh, I have a skill. Hey, you have a website. Can I do photography, videography for your website? And we came up with a deliverable idea. So it made it possible. I got something good out of it.
You're bartering for services and goods for things that you can actually use.
Yeah, it's worth a dollar amount, whatever it is, and you can barter with it. So
to me, that's when barters make the most sense, is when I've said this so many times, I would actually buy this, or this improves my quality of life. This is something I would actually pay for. Let's trade.
Yes.
All right. So far we've got you recognizing early on that you wanted and needed to essentially fill your tool belt with different skills because you felt it would serve you.
Mhm.
And we have building off of small momentum.
Yes, sir.
All right. You're up.
My next one is, I think, outside of the photography box, but talking and meeting anyone and everyone that you can and letting them know, not obnoxiously, but letting them know some of your skill sets.
Said by an introvert.
Yeah.
Explain that before you get into it.
And it's looking back, Monday morning quarterbacking a little bit.
Okay.
A high percent of my paid gigs have come through networking and connections that aren't direct pitches for, hey, I want to work for your company and do this.
Okay. Pause. Freeze frame. I'm gonna be interruptive, but in a good way. What does the indirect sell look like in a friendly environment? I mean, I don't know when this is happening. I know you love the Birch Hill Tavern.
Yeah.
Tell us what the indirect, this is an art. This is a bit of a dance, right? This isn't a science. This isn't a formula. Tell us a bit of the nuance of how that, what you mentioned, the bringing up your work and what you do, the indirect sell, how you're doing that in a way that's effective and isn't making the conversation about you and is actually leading to beneficial outcomes in terms of your photography.
Yes. So Birch Hill Tavern is a great example to take this from fruition to the end. Now, I've lived in my house for about a decade. This is the restaurant that's right down the street. I've been there 100 times, if not
twice, haven't I?
1,000, probably. So if you've been there twice from Canada, I must have been there 1,000,000 times. So in that, you develop relationships. I don't go in there and say, hey, everyone, I have an important announcement. Like my reel went viral today.
Clinking glasses.
Look at this photo I just took. No, but sometimes conversations, if you hang out with people and you become friendly with the staff, sometimes conversations come out where it's like, it just gets brought up. And you're like, oh, look at these. You went to Alaska? We're going to Alaska. Conversations come up. So through that, you develop relationships. I was able to hang my work in Birch Hill Tavern. Mm-hmm. That's one step. Now, people are like, oh, that's the guy that he's here sometimes. That's his stuff. Oh, cool. So a financial firm.
Hang on. You've skipped an important step because there's a lot of people listening who would be like, oh, hell yeah, that's super cool to go from patron to patron who has his work up.
Right. Sorry. So the bar manager and owner now, at the time, had artwork up. And I, for a long time, was nicely knocking on the door. I wasn't pushing. But I was like, listen, I have a lot. Like, I feel like with this birch trees, like it's a woody tavern. I was like, I feel like my decor, I'm confident, would do kind of well in here. It would fit. It's not over the top. We don't have to fill the whole place up, but I have some nice prints. And I could fill at least a couple of these walls that are pretty blank right now or at the moment. This was during a redesign. So I sent her a bunch of my favorite photos. I divided them by seasons because I thought maybe we could do this seasonally. She picked out the ones she liked. I had some. I had to print a few. I took an investment on myself again. Mm-hmm. So not asking them for payments. Spent a whole day.
Low risk, right?
What's that?
Low risk.
Yeah. Spent a whole day hanging things up, putting my cards out. So now my work is there. Now it's even a better conversation starter for when I'm there. And
you're the guy now. You're the guy.
It's not even by me. I'm not trying to be the guy. It was almost a little embarrassing, but people would talk about it in front of me to the bartender or whatnot, and she would make connections. So now I'm making connections. one of the waitresses who you've met, Sydney, I can use her name, was working for a financial firm, a different one at the time. And this guy loved my stuff and had all these grand plans of how I was going to come in and do a lot of content for their firm and their office.
Mm-hmm.
Cool, great. This connection has made a connection. Sydney now works for a different financial firm, but she remembers those back and forths, those pitches, those storyboards that I created, and suggested me for the financial firm that she is working with now. So, long story short, those connections trickled down to this really nice opportunity from talking and networking and showing your stuff and letting people know, yes, you are a photographer. Yes, you're capable of certain things. Yes, you can do certain things. So that went that way. Part two of this story, everyone knows I work a lot with Telefunken and their microphones as a microphone company out of Connecticut. The bartender and owner of Birch Hill Tavern is really good friends with a singer-songwriter who also is a worker, manager, head up guy at Telefunken. So that connection, she got me a contact for him, and I had this idea with their wooden mics I've talked about before to photograph them in nature amongst the woods, and had this connection between the three of us. So because I know someone, this one person, the tentacles that she knows, I'm in her mind as like a photographer that she knows that's local. So when things come up, maybe yes or no, my name gets brought up and these things have happened. So reaching out to a lot of different people and finding different, you keep it in mind, like, oh, that person owns a treeing company. That'd be cool, like drone work while they're doing tree cutting. I'll keep that in mind. You keep like all these little avenues in mind, and when an idea starts, you have this connection that's not just a rando person being like, hey, I want to do photography for your treeing company. You have this connection, like, hey, we go to Birch Hill Tavern together. I know you own the treeing company from town. You might recognize me. I have this idea. It's a whole different pitch when there's like comfort and reference to it. Yes.
Very good.
So that's my number two is
all from having the boldness to suggest that your work should be on the wall.
Yeah.
Maybe not all from, but it's you have a permanent gallery that everybody in there can attach to your face and to your personality and to.
Yep. Know whose works up there now? Matt from our trip in Alaska. All his Alaska stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah. Which is kind of cool to be like, hey, I was on
buddy,
that trip.
That's my turf.
That's I have that photo. No, but it's cool to see and to be like, wow, that's from our trip, and his stuff's beautifully displayed in a restaurant. So
yeah, that's
shout out to Matt.
That's very cool. I think I asked this at the beginning. We don't need to go too much into this, but and maybe I think about the whole introvert extrovert thing in the wrong way, but is it difficult for you to bring yourself up in conversation? How can people get over that? People often struggle to talk about themselves in a way that feels right.
Yeah, all I can say is the more you do it, the more you put yourself out there, the easier it gets. A lot of it comes with my age. It was not that easy at 20. It was not that easy in my teens. It was even harder. As a kid, it was even harder. I would send my brother to go ask the waiter or waitress for an extra ketchup. Like I was shy. I was shy. I was quiet. I still am. I still have a bit of that, but
you have moments where you float off into the ether.
Oh, yeah.
I don't really know how to describe them. They're like Aaron gazes.
Inner. I'm inner.
and then I'll say something to you and you kind of like come back to earth. It's very peculiar.
Yeah, I'm often thinking. But yeah, as you get older
too, though, man. Like I like being humorous. Just I don't know, maybe in your sense, just having, I like being bold. I know this isn't advice to somebody who's shy, but sometimes just being unhinged and goofy can help you a lot and start a conversation. Oh, these walls are looking pretty bare, huh? You know, maybe not.
And comfort. Am I going into a brand new restaurant and pitching my work? To be honest, no. Like I felt very comfortable there. Like I said, I've been there a lot of times, basically friends with the staff. It's where I take my son for dinner. It's the easy place to go. It's right down the street. I love the food. It's a great place. So there's a comfort there, which is basically cheating, but it allowed me to, have the confidence, I guess, to, well, it's not the same as me saying, or Seth saying, go pitch your work to, 10 restaurants in your town, people you
but
don't
maybe
know.
that's not efficient. I think that's the point I want to make. That's the point I made by asking this question. Like, maybe that's not efficient at all. Why would you not, in this instance, take the path of least resistance?
Oh, I would, yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of times people try to discredit the success of others when there's a connection, or when there's, you said I have a connection.
Mhm.
It'd be the wrong thought process for people listening to go, oh, well, that's why. Hey, that's part of this whole thing. That's part of
why
this
it's my most important point.
That's maybe the most important part. People hire people they like, people they get along with, not necessarily the most skilled person.
Right.
I would want to work with somebody I get along with who's not as great as the person I don't know who can be a total asshole, or who is.
Yeah, and there's skin in the game. I think when there's skin in the game, to what your point earlier, where it's like, what do they have to lose? If I'm some random guy from South Dakota working with someone from Connecticut and they're shipping me out stuff, like who is this person? They could be making it completely up. But if it's like, oh, that's that person's friend and they know me through they have a responsibility to that friend to at least communicate and be a straight shooter with me. Otherwise it wrecks their reputation. So there's a little bit of a, they're on the line for credibility as well. And I think that makes it a little easier to be like, okay, well, at least there's a connection, and like this person's going to be harder off blowing me off because I could see them around at any time.
Yeah. And I don't think it means that you need to only go and try and do work for people you have connections with. I mean, there's something to be said for the cold pitch, but what I'm saying is, don't let pride get in the way. Right.
Yeah. And again, the easy in. Now, if I did go to the other restaurants, hey, my stuff was up at Birch Hill Tavern for the better part of a year. We had great success. Now it's like, oh, okay, there's a concept behind it, right? I had a connection or not. Now I have a portfolio item of doing that and having some success.
Yeah.
So now I can take it to those cold pitches and have a proof of concept.
Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. Okay, my last point for part 1 of this episode.
Do it.
I think I have just instinctually or naturally, this hasn't been something I've really had to work on, which I'm grateful for. I'm very much, and always have been, somebody who has no expectations for the future. Now, I don't want people to confuse that with desire, right? Of course, we all have things and outcomes we want to have happen, but I don't expect them to, or I don't expect the trajectory of a certain portion of my life or a certain project I'm working on to lead to a very specific outcome. I very much find it, what's the word? I find it to be not stressful by continuing to progress and move forward and improve and look for opportunity without putting in a box what needs to happen. I like to use the saying, I like to follow my nose.
Yeah.
And I feel why that has been something I consider that I've gotten right is because it has avoided needless frustration when something very specific if something very specific I had envisioned in my head over and over and over again didn't happen. That can be very unsettling. It can be very morale crushing. Maybe even to a point where that happens enough times in a row that you just stop what you're doing. So again, this isn't me saying you should have zero expectations, but this is again another stylistic approach that works for me. I think it also has played to my personality type that loves novelty. I love not knowing what's coming.
Right.
And it's fun to continue to follow leads and build off of opportunity and gain that momentum, like I talked about in my first point, and see what happens. And look back a month, 3 weeks, a year, and be like, that was a pretty crazy path. What went well? Where can I improve? Where did I find joy? How can I take those concepts and apply them so that I continue to have those kinds of experiences that I love and that serve me well? TLDR, I feel like when you have very, very specific expectations that don't get met, it can be a gigantic letdown.
Yep, it can be, for sure.
Do you operate this way? Do you have a very specific? I mean, I've always envisioned people in school who were like, high school, I'm going to be a doctor.
Yeah.
You check up 10 years later, they're a doctor. You're like, how? I mean, that's very amazing to me that some people are wired that way and can do that. But I also feel for people who say, I'm going to be a doctor, and then variable X, Y, and Z happens that's perhaps entirely out of their control, that eliminates that possibility that they've structured their whole future identity around. And I feel like that can be really upending, I guess is what I'm saying. So how do you relate to this point?
I agree, and I feel like I'm on the same page with you. I feel like life, right? I'm at the understanding of life can go in a bajillion different directions. And as much as we think we have control over those outcomes, those expectations, you just never know what's going to happen. So there is a sense of gentle guiding. Of course, you want to strive towards something. You don't want complete apathy, but a deep understanding that none of this is guaranteed. And I feel like, especially with photography and the business aspect of it, I've talked about sort of a indifference, which my environment has created even more so of what you're saying, I think, in a way of like, it's kind of like being at the casino and you had a great start, and so you have the money that you went with, and you now won $10,000 worth of chips. Mm-hmm. So now you can play kind of aggressive and not be too mad. If you put the starting money in your pocket, you're not touching that. You've promised. You're not going to lose a thing here. You go, now I can be a little bit more aggressive. I'm not playing to not lose. I can play to win. I can take some chances. I can go for things. The no's don't bother me as much. I could just move on to the next one. I can do the best that I can. And if it doesn't work out, okay, I will learn from it and move on. And no matter what ends up happening, but I feel like that release in control, release in holding on and gripping too tight, can set you free and allow you to bounce and move through the current. Yes. You said last time I couldn't talk about golf, but this reminds me of, again, the symbolism of golf and life. I wrote an article when I was into golf, and I basically had the golfer's mindset. What's it called? Blog posts. And one of my posts was, when you grip too tightly to the club because you're trying to not lose the ball is when you lose the ball. You're not swinging freely. You're not letting everything release through and allowing everything to unfold and the ball to fly. If you're holding tight, you don't release and the ball slices out to the right. So a lot of golfers, when they have danger to the right, they hold on a little tighter, trying to control and aim it. And that creates it going right to where it does not want to go, into the woods, into the right, instead of just saying, the best thing I can do is let this go and keep going through my process and seeing what happens. But trying to control it, trying to will it down the middle creates the opposite effect. And it reminds me of what you're saying is kind of like this idea of, I can't need this gig to come through,
Right.
because my anxiety in pitching will come through. My anxiety in the emailing will come through. My anxiety overall might translate to the CEO, where he's like, this dude's a little nutty. Like, I'm not feeling this vibe. I'm not feeling this energy.
Well, you're getting into scarcity brain.
Yeah.
Versus,
So it all
versus abundant brain. I mean, when you have abundancy, you're naturally more confident versus when you have scarcity, you're fearful, and that comes through.
So how do you defend if you are, I mean, let me see how to phrase this. If you're trying not to dwell too much in the world of expectations, how do you not drift into the world of apathy?
What do you mean by that? As in not care?
Yeah, not care about. It's just, so if we're into a process, if we're into, okay, so we're working out and we're eating healthy all day, our expectations might be, if you're truly okay with the world and let go, your expectations might be, that is all I care about. I don't care about the scale. I don't care about what I look like in the mirror. I just want a healthy lifestyle. So for me, I'm going to exercise and eat really well. I've let go of the results. However,
I think that's when you get the results. That would be my argument. I feel like what you're talking about is process versus result focus, which is what we talk about all the time.
Yeah.
There's the saying, if you focus on the fundamentals, right? If you focus, let's use a sports analogy, football. If you just focus on your footwork, focus on your speed, focus on where you're throwing, like how you're throwing the ball, you focus on the fundamentals of anything, the scoreboard takes care of itself. Right?
Yep.
If I'm on the football field and I stare at the scoreboard forever and I put all my focus on that, that's not putting me up points.
Yep.
What's putting me up points is focusing on building my skills, and when it's time to perform, just focusing on doing the action and having trust in my training.
Yeah.
And my learning. So in your example, the focus is on doing what I know I need to do and letting go of an expectation on how long this will take, expectations on where I'll be at compared to others. So the defense, what you asked for, to avoid just not to letting go too far, I think is what you're saying. Letting go and accepting to a point where you just don't care what happens, I think, is to have a desired general outcome in mind and focus on the things you know you need to do to get there, and reward yourself for showing up, just for doing the thing. Right? I mean, we talk about this sometimes. If one person listens to the show, or if 1 million people listen to the show, it doesn't take away the fact that you and I have sat down for 277 weeks in a row. That's how I think about things all the time.
Yeah, true.
Anyways, go ahead. I know you were going to say something.
I was just going to ask permission for one more golf analogy.
Oh, that was a golf club, not a whip. Go ahead.
Again, for the analogy, maybe people can understand, or it's just interesting. especially in New England, you don't play golf during the winter. And there's a thing called spring golf. It's a little sloppy. You haven't swung in a long time, but there is the myth of the spring golfer. And there's also another saying that's like fear the sick and injured golfer. And they go to the same thing, or they touch upon the same theory. The spring golfer often comes out and has one of their best rounds of the year. Why is that?
Yeah, well, I already know the answer, and I can speak from quick anecdote.
Go.
The last time I had played golf was around the very start of the podcast, start of my journey and interest into like practicing mindfulness and developing, just improving my mental health, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I think last year, so 4 years later, after starting this journey and feeling like I've learned a thing or two, I hit the links. I went out on the course, right? So it had been 4 years. I had been shooting like hundreds and just not great scores. I remember you would get frustrated all the time. You shank it left. It's embarrassing, whatever. Just kind of the wrong mentality. The mentality that I feel like I've gotten out of for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
So last year, or maybe it was 2 years ago, it doesn't matter. Several years have passed, go to the course. I'm thinking to myself, this could be bad, but whatever. I shot my best score in my entire life.
Yeah.
Because I was just in a different state of mind. In my opinion, loose, didn't care about the income. I was happy to be outside on a nice day with people I cared about, swinging a club, chatting, having a good time. I remember every time walking up to the ball and just saying, I'm just going to hit it. You know, I have my swing is my swing. I have not practiced at all. Like, I'm just going to go hit the ball. And it was the best score I've ever shot in my life.
Yeah.
So why the spring golfer is good is it's representative of that story I've just described.
Yeah. The spring golfer lets go of all the shoulds, all the should be's, all the practice they've done. I've practiced for 3 months in a row. I should be in the 80s. I should be in the 70s. We go out in the spring and go, it's beautiful to be with friends. It's beautiful weather out. It's finally warm. I'm probably going to suck today. You allow all options to happen. And with that, there's a looseness, there's a freeness to what you're doing, and a sort of disconnect between the result and just enjoying what's actually happening.
Right.
And then you add up your score and you're like, I did really well. And that is the dagger, the silver dagger.
The irony
that creates the rest of your year, where now I should shoot a 75 next time I come out. I just shot a spring 75. This is going to be my best year ever. And you start tightening up. You start being attached to the result versus everything else. And the same with the sick or injured golfer is a saying in the PGA Tour, because when someone's sick or injured, their focus changes. They don't feel good. Their mind's not in it. And they sort of let go and they're not as focused on how well they have to play. It's more like, I want to protect my back today. So now I'm just swinging nice and easy. I'm letting it flow, whatever it may be. And they usually have really good rounds because their health kind of overshadows all that other expectation stuff. Right. And they're like, if I don't play well, it's because I was hurt. It kind of allows them to just see what happens.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
I was going to say just the overarching theme in one sentence is that when you let go, it's liberating.
Yeah.
It's freeing.
Yeah.
All right.
And so let's tie it back to photography. Like in any sort of gig, or allow yourself a little bit of room to
permission. Yeah.
Yeah. Permission to just really enjoy being there. Go with it. Don't worry about, oh my God, I hope they love this. I hope they love this. It's going to make you tight.
I'm here. I'm doing it. I've been hired. This is awesome. I mean, obviously you just can't fight nerves, but that's a helpful antidote to overwhelming anxiety. And I wanted to add the caveat. This is not suggesting that you don't practice and you don't learn and you don't improve. I think it's suggesting that when it's time to perform at anything, you accept that however much you've trained or practiced, that's where you're at. That's what you have. You're here. I'm going to show up. and I'm going to do the best I can, but I'm not anticipating a certain outcome. Whatever happens, happens. And that's when it's so freeing.
Yep.
All right, man. Part 2 next time.
All right. Take care.
All right. If you like this one, leave a rating review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We very much appreciate it. You can leave a comment too if there's something you resonated with, or if there's something you want us to talk about or add to this list. So till next time.
Bye.